Good afternoon, everybody. Are we all fed and watered? And wasn't it lovely food and water? Yeah. We're really lucky. We got a lucky break about 18 months ago. They say it's an ill wind that blows, so unfortunately the Drug Education Workers Forum wound up. So many education workers had moved on into different areas. They weren't coming to the monthly meetings, and they tried to keep it going. We tried to keep it going, and it just didn't happen. But they had a few bob left over in the bank account. So we had a meeting with them, because we were one of the founder members of it. So we had a meeting with the officers there at the time, and they said, look, it'll kill us to hand this money back to the DPU. Why don't you put a proposal together? And I had been chatting to Kevin Sabat and that, and I had said to him, God, I'd love to bring you over, but we wouldn't be able to afford him, So it's a good job he's not here. So to cut a long story short, we put a proposal together for the 2 days. We wanted 1 day for the community workers and 1 day for the parents that we work with. And then we were able to extend today to the community workers as well, so it's a kind of two-sided thing. So we're very lucky that the DPU have sponsored the whole event, every aspect of it. So we're delighted with that. We lost 120,000 in the last 5 years in funding. It was cut from our budget. So we've all cut down. Paul doesn't work the summer months. We can't pay her in the summer months. She just works September through to June. And Anthea is a part-time position. I'm paid for 4 days and I work 5 days. And we've all done our bit to keep it ticking over. We're a very small organisation. But I know some of you wouldn't know much about it. Others know because we've met you through the Family Focus programme. And just to say, that programme is available to communities. We're now working outside. Well, we were Dublin, Wicklow, a little bit of Wexford from time to time, but generally Dublin, Wicklow, Kildare. But now we have tutors now in the North East. We started a pilot programme there. We work in cooperation with the North East Regional Drug and Alcohol Task Force. And we've tutors now in Meath delivering Family Focus. They were here yesterday, so they were delighted with that. And we've, I think we've 19 people now to meet next week that want to train in our Family Focus. So we're delighted over that. We're doing phase 2 of the programme. There's some JLOs in the middle of that. There's some juvenile, some youth justice project workers, some family support workers in it. There's a great mix in it. So I'm delighted for the North East, and I'm delighted for CAD, because it's great to see a programme that we developed being extended to that. What else did I want to say? No, that's it. That was the tutor training programme. That was the last kind of point that I wanted to mention. We had great speakers this morning. I think people are saying that, and it's the same this afternoon. The calibre of speakers that we have this afternoon with Rita, with Philip, and with Dory. Again, just building on what has been learned so far. Rita will be speaking in a moment or two, and CEO from Parentline, and Rita and her colleagues are doing tremendous work down there. She'll explain what they're actually doing, but they're very much providing support and information and just helping parents who are in a position, who are troubled, who have issues in the family. And it's like they have the pulse on parents, it's a finger on the pulse, because they see the emerging trends then through their work with parents, so they can respond. And one way they responded was to, when they began to get increased number of calls related to anger and aggression, that they sought out the nonviolent resistance, NVR programme, and Rita will be telling you all about that. But that was one way of responding to needs that had been identified by parents contacting them. So I know you're going to enjoy the presentation, and I'll hand over to Rita now.
Okay, there we go. We're a national helpline, confidential helpline for parents, guardians and professionals. And our role is to give support to parents. Every one of us, whoever did a job, got trained for it in some way, but we don't get trained to be a parent. And we often say that even if you did get a handbook, you'd want another one tomorrow and another one for your other child, and you just couldn't live with that. So things are evolving and training all the time and changing all the time. So Parentline is there to offer the information, guidance and support. It's absolutely confidential and without judgment. So no matter how silly that question seems or how severe that question is, Parentline is there for you. And if we can't answer it, we can usually point you in the way towards somebody who can. We work with a database of about 3,500 organisations that we can usually pass people on. But the main thing about Parentline is that we're there to support the parent, to allow them say things to somebody that they possibly wouldn't say to anybody else about their child, or that they can just vent, let off, and then we support and give the guidance there. We were set up more than 30 years ago, and it was originally a group of social work or public health nurses that set up Parentline, and their concern was that we were used to a society where a new mother with a new baby had her mother, her aunts, her neighbours around her, and she got support. But as they were moving into sort of big anonymous housing estates, at the time it was around Dublin, the mother could be isolated, and there was fear for the mother and the baby at the time. So they set up parent support groups, and eventually the parent support group grew into the helpline so that we could expand the service nationally and to cover the vast range of parenting issues that, really am bad at this, am I? The vast range of issues that parents encounter. We're funded by TUSLA, just about funded by TUSLA. We've got one part-time paid employee, which is me, and we've got 48 trained volunteers. I often say, when I say the word volunteers, that people sort of underestimate the work they do. These people they don't get paid for the work, but they are absolutely professional in everything they do. They're very, very well trained, and there's a vast amount of experience there. 2 of our volunteers actually were with us for 30 years, so you can imagine the amount of experience they have. We talk to about 3,000 parents on the helpline every year. We would also give talks in schools and large places of employment, all that sort of thing. So we do encounter a huge amount of parents every year and a huge amount of parenting issues. So over our lifetime, that would be more than 100,000 parents. Now, as Bernie said, we see ourselves sort of as a barometer for what's happening for parents, because things change all the time. As I said, we originally, when we started, we were largely dealing with postnatal depression. Over the years, bullying was a sort of top of the pile at one stage. Drugs was top of the pile at another stage. At the moment, the top 10 issues, the highest one is anger and aggression. And then child abusing parents is 8%. So together they represent 32% of the calls, which is absolutely huge. And one of the benefits of being a very small organisation is that we can react very quickly. So when we see changing trends, we take some action. And so when we saw these 2 categories increasing, we went looking for a solution for parents, and we found the Nonviolent Resistance Programme. Now, the Nonviolent Resistance Programme was developed in Israel and sort of Irishized by a guy called Declan Coogan in Galway University, and he calls it an evidence-based support for parents, which is changing the lives for the better around the country. And it is, definitely. Now, it's a very practical tool that empowers parents, and the tips that you learn and the skills that is taught in the Nonviolence Resistance Programme can be used in very many parenting situations. Not just when your child is being violent towards you. There's lots of little things that are useful as a parent. So we trained a team of originally 11 facilitators to deliver the programme. Now, the programme is being delivered around the country, but mostly on a group basis. Parentline do it on a one-to-one basis, and I suppose our USP is that we can deliver it over the phone, which means that it's available to everybody around the country. It also, it's immediate. There's no waiting list. There might be a week or something, but it's almost immediate. And the other thing about it is, violence in the home like this is something that parents really struggle with. They don't want to tell that it's not easy for them to talk about it. So when they're talking to Parentline, we don't know who we're talking to. We don't see the face. And they can choose to come into the office if a parent wants to, but we can deliver it over the phone. And so we don't know who we're talking to. We don't even know what part of the country they're from. And all we have is a mobile number. So we can ring them and talk about it, deliver it that way. And as I said, the training is useful in very many parenting situations. So if we run through the core elements of the MVR programme, and the first principle of the MVR programme is that there's no excuse for abuse. So no matter what the child's issue is, he or she can't be forgiven for being abusive in the home. The parent can understand, can be sympathetic, can know what's causing it, but it's not relevant. The fact of the matter is, if the child is abusing the parent, it's not acceptable, and the parent needs support to deal with that. Now, I categorise those as anger and aggression and child-to-parent violence, but it's also control and it doesn't mean that the child is beating up the parent. It does in some situations, but it's all that controlling, demanding way. And if the parent feels threatened in any way, it's time to step in. So there's a number of stages through the programme. The first one is commitment. And if the parent comes along, he or she, and I have to say, slightly more mothers than fathers, and we deal with couples as well, must be committed to the programme, because it's going to be a big change in the house, and often things get worse before they get better. So it's not easy to take it on, but a brave parent will. The next thing is de-escalation skills. When a child erupts and there's roaring and shouting, and or anybody is roaring and shouting, it's very easy to rise to it and answer back and whatever. But one of the tips around the NVR is to walk away. Don't raise the bar. And then increasing parental presence. I think it was mentioned earlier on about boundaries and how kids like the idea of rules being set, and it's a demonstration of how much a parent does love the child when they set the boundaries. So very often, if there is this difficulty in the home, the parent will pull back and say, oh, leave him to it, I can't talk to him. But the increasing parental presence is about being there for the child in whatever suits your family. Sometimes it might just be a text, hope all went well okay in school today, or how to get on the match, or whatever is appropriate for that child. Typically we would say, don't be asking questions because they don't want to answer them, but it's a sort of, I hope you would score the goal, or whatever you might say, something that's reminding the child you're there for them. Or if they're sitting watching, even if it is rubbish on TV, you might sit down beside them and say, just keep engaging with them. And then there's stepping out of the secrecy and developing a support network. As I said earlier on, if there is something like this going on in the home, it's very easy to keep quiet about it. You don't want Mrs. Such and such a body down the road knowing about it, and you may not even want your sister or whatever knowing about it, because parents feel it reflects on them. I mustn't be a good parent, even though they have another 4 children that are all fine, and their relationship with their partner and all that's fine, but they think, oh gosh, a good parent wouldn't have this situation. That's one reason for not telling, and the other reason is they don't want to be disloyal to their child, because they know that, or they're hoping that this will go away, and in 5 years' time, when we've all forgotten about it, Mrs. Whatever will remember your Johnny was a brat when he was 16. So look for help. And then the other side of it is, as I said, it sometimes gets worse before it gets better. So if violence did erupt, it's no harm having somebody there to help you with it, to call on. And there's a family announcement. And this is sort of taking the focus off the child that's being violent and making an announcement. Now that sounds very, I stand up and I make an announcement. It's done over time and it's casual. That we won't accept violence in this house. And it applies to everybody. And that means the parent can't be violent. And then refusal of orders and a service strike. Teenagers particularly can be quite demanding. Give me a lift, give me money. I want to sleep over, whatever. So a little bit of, no, it doesn't suit me now, in a gentle way, respectful way. We might do it next week, but not just now. So it's taking that power away from the child and taking it back to the parent. And then there's steps of reconciliation. As I said a few minutes ago, it's very easy to dislike your child in this situation, but underneath it all, the parent loves the child, and they certainly did love them when they were a baby, and it's about finding ways to demonstrate love. One of the suggestions that somebody made, I actually think it might have been abroad, was putting a little sticker in their lunchbox saying, "I love them." And I know I threatened my son with that one, saying, if you don't behave yourself, I'll put a sticker in your lunchbox. But whatever is appropriate. So, just in practical terms, how the MVR works. The Parentline, or the parent will call Parentline, and the facilitator on the line will sort of assess the call, have a chat with the parent, and through that decide if they think an MVR is appropriate. And they will then explain the process, explain how it works. And sometimes the parent, or mostly actually, the parent will at this stage go away and have a little think about it, because it's kind of a big thing. It's a big change pattern and whatever. And they'll go away and think about it and say, well, if I want, I'll get back to you. The vast majority of people then come back to admin and we'll set up the appointments. And typically, we meet the parent once a week for about an hour to hour and a half. And it's done, either the parent will come into the Parentline office if that's what they want, or we will ring them at an agreed time. And the thing about having the MVR with somewhere like Parentline is that we're there for them all the time. They may be doing their MVR on a Wednesday morning, but if they're a bit concerned on Friday afternoon, they've got somebody to ring and bounce things off them. And I should have said that the programme will run as long as the parent wants. Some parents find after 2 or 3 weeks, that's enough. I've seen a change, and some go on for 15 or 16 weeks. But Parentline is there for them throughout that, and there's no charge, so it doesn't matter to the parent from a cost point of view. So it's typically run, as I said, it could be 2 or 3 weeks is enough for the parent, but the ideal programme is about 6 or 7 weeks. So session 1, a lot of it is where the facilitator and the parent or parents will sit down together and discuss the process, what's involved here. They'll set the goals. What exactly is the parent expecting at the end of this? Reassure about the commitment, and the parent makes the commitment. Originally, when we started, we actually had a document that the parent would sign for this. They'd take it away, sign it and bring it back. We don't do that anymore. It's done occasionally, but typically no, it's just that verbal thing. And then the parent is taught the de-escalation skills. And the de-escalation skills, they're introduced on week 1, but they're actually touched on almost every week, because it's the core to it, really. And then week 2 and subsequent weeks, we start off the session by reviewing how things went. Sometimes the parent would keep a diary of how things went. So, you know, sometimes they wanted less formally than that, but whatever works. We'd encourage the parent to look for the support network. Almost always, the parent says, "Nobody I can tell. Nobody I can tell." And by the end of the session or the next week, they will have found somebody. And for some reason, Nana seems to be the person that works well. And one of the reasons being that the child won't like the idea of Nana knowing that he or she is misbehaving like this. And obviously Nana's close to Mammy. And if Nana's able, like if Nana's 95, well, that's not going to work. But if Nana is an appropriate person, or whoever is appropriate person, it might be an uncle if it's a boy, or somebody he admires, and this is somebody that can offer parental support, but also the child is somewhat embarrassed that they're being rumbled. And then it's also externalizing the problem. It's getting out of the house. It's not all just happening in here. And then we focus on the increasing the parental presence. As I said, just being there for the child. It might be, one of the tips was out of the blue, give them credit on the phone, or, say, will we go out for a meal, just you and me, or that kind of thing. Just letting them know you're there for them. You don't have to say you love them and be gushing about it, but be there for them. Say you love them if you can, and if it works. And then the family announcement is usually covered around week 4, and it is quite clearly that there will be no more violence in this house. And violence is shouting, bad language, the slamming of the doors, as well as the more aggressive situation. Week 5 is the refusing orders and the strike. Now, this doesn't happen as religiously as this. You might happen that the strike might happen in week 2, but this is the way it's laid out in the original programme. And you take each parent as it comes and each situation as it comes. And the severity of the situation before the parent came to Parentline. And then the acts of reconciliation. Part of the diary is asking the parent to write down something they like about that child, or something the child did good today. God, he was pleasant there, he smiled at me, or whatever it might be. And write that down. And at the end of the week, you can see, that was good and that was good. And it's all about just focusing on the positive and reminding yourself why you love this child and why you want things to improve. And then that sort of naturally communicates to the child then. I say child. This programme is sort of 4 up to 18-year-olds. Now, we have dealt with parents with over 18. The reason being, over 18, you can get a barring order because they're adults. But no parent sort of says, here, it's his 18th birthday today, I'll go and get a barring order tomorrow. Parents want their children there, and they're talking about 21, 22-year-olds as well. So whatever the age is, we will work with the parent on it. The youngest child we had was 11, which is very young to be in that situation. But I think fair play to the mother. She could see he's a bit stroppy here. We need to stop this. So at the end, there's the review meeting. How did we get on? And then the reassurance that Parentline is always there for the parent. Very often, a parent would go through this process, and then every now and again would ring up and say, just remind me on this, that or the other, I want to bounce this off you, or this worked, or that didn't work, or whatever, and we'll go through it again. So some reasons why people would ring Parentline about the NVR. This is a situation where a social worker from an A&E in one of the hospitals rang Parentline to say that she had a mother in with a broken arm because her 19-year-old daughter had broken her arm. And the mother was completely hopeless. She just couldn't see any way out of this. This was rock bottom. But she did the NVR, and it worked really well. Now, this daughter was probably 19, and she actually eventually left the house. But she left on a positive note. She grew up, and the mother was able to let her go, and things just generally greatly improved. This was quite a young mother and father, and they had 13 and 16-year-old boys, and the 16-year-old was very, very aggressive, and the 13-year-old was not a bad kid, but things were going really badly in the house. And when they went through the MVR, as well as all the tips that were going on here, they realised that Mammy would ask the oldest kid to do something, will you hoover the hall floor? And he wouldn't do it. And he'd kick off and there was all sorts going on. And she'd ignore that and say to the younger guy, will you do it? And if he didn't do it, he was punished. Because she knew she was still sort of in control of this guy. And our facilitator in this case asked the mum and dad came in on this one, and asked the mum and dad to ask the two kids to write down what they thought. And that's where it unfolded, that the parents were absolutely focusing, almost in a positive way, on the aggressive guy. They were rewarding him by ignoring his behaviour. The other little guy was being punished, and it caused endless. But that had a really good outcome in the end. I must say, that mother said after 2 weeks there was a big change in their house, just when this was pointed out, because they just didn't see that was happening. So before a parent starts the MVR, they're thinking about, what will become of my child as he grows older. I want to cry every time he insults me. It's not right for a boy to think it's okay to treat women like this. The parents are sort of lost. But one of the things that struck me about this one is very often people say, oh, that behaviour is learned behaviour. Dad must be abusive towards mammy or whatever. But if you can see in this situation, the father's just taken aback that it's not appropriate to carry on like that. And then, as I was saying earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to be that physical attack. He has not physically attacked me, but I live in fear that he will. I'm afraid of him. I don't want my partner involved. He is not his father, and things could become worse, because she's blaming herself, forgiving him almost for behaving like that. And he's verbally abusive to me, his sisters, and throws furniture around the house. And he's 5'2". I'm 5'2", and he's 6 foot. And you can just imagine somebody much taller than you being very aggressive, and it is a fearful situation. And that guy there is particularly fearful looking. And so, looking at what the Parentline facilitators say, what struck me was the amount of sympathy mother had for her son, and how she was prepared to accept his unacceptable behaviour because she felt guilty that her relationship with his father had broken down. The mother's looking for an excuse for his behaviour, and she's blaming herself, and it's not her fault. No matter what happened to their relationship, sons still shouldn't be carry on like that. But it shows her love, her concern, despite all. I can't imagine how difficult her life is, having to deal with that level of violence and aggression. And then the last one, as I said, we started 30 years ago, where we were concerned about the mother and the baby. When I started in Parentline, we were concerned about the child safety. Now we're concerned about the parents. And I think that's a whole shift in society. It's not just what's coming to us, it's a whole shift in society. And so at the end of the MVR programme, some short, I think, telling comments. I saw a difference after one session. It's good to know that I'm not alone. As I said, a huge amount of people just don't tell anybody about this. This can go on a long time before they tell. And my home is a happier place. And that's not just for mum and dad, but it's the whole family and the extended family, cousins and whatever. So that's the NVR. So now you know where Parentline is, and if you want to ring for any issue, there we are. Thank you.